Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Joshua. Today we begin looking at Joshua chapter 23, which begins the final section of the book of Joshua. Chapters 23 and 24 form the last part of this wonderful Old Testament book. Now, chapters 23 and 24 give to us Joshua's farewell address to the people. It is his final word to the children of Israel and his final charge to them as their leader. Now, for years he has led them. He's led them into possession of the promised land, the division of the land among the tribes. But now he knows that his days are coming to an end. His earthly sojourn is almost over. So as his final act of leadership for the people, he gives a farewell address, a farewell charge to the people. Now, this farewell address is really in two parts. Part 1 is chapter 23. Part 2 is chapter 24. And I'll notice a slight difference. For instance, in chapter 23, verse 2, it says, he summoned Israel, their elders, their leaders, their judges, their officials, and began to speak to them. And then in chapter 24, it says, he assembled all of the tribes of Israel at Shechem, along with their elders, leaders, judges, and officials. So chapter 23 seems to be to the leaders of the people, the leaders of the tribes, the leaders of the clans, the leaders of the families. And then in chapter 24, it seems to be to all the people. It has a great national assembly. As many as can come and assemble at Shechem. And he addresses them. But the content of both chapters is pretty much the same. A final word, a final address, a final charge given to the people of God by Joshua, who had led them for so long. Now notice how chapter 23 begins. It says, after a long time had passed, and the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them, Joshua, by then a very old man, summoned all of Israel, their elders, leaders, judges, officials, and said to them. So first it tells us that a long time had passed, probably since the end of chapter 22. So they've possessed the promised land, they've divided the land, and now a number of years have passed since then, and Joshua's days are coming to an end. And so he summons the people to hear his final word as their leader. His final word before his earthly pilgrimage comes to a conclusion. It says a long time, but it doesn't tell us exactly. Now, if you turn over to chapter 24, the end of the chapter, which describes the death of Joshua, it says that Joshua was 110 years old when he died. That's in verse 29 of chapter 24. After these things, that is his farewell address, he said he died at the age of 110. Now, how many years had it been since the conquest was completed and we come to the death of Joshua? Well, we're not sure precisely, but most of the evidence seems to indicate that Joshua was in his early 80s, 80, 81, 82, somewhere along in there, when the conquest began. Now, we know that the conquest lasted about 7 years. We've mentioned that before. So by the time the promised land is in Israel's possession, Joshua's in his later 80s, 87, 88, 89, somewhere in that time frame. And now it tells us he was 110 when he dies. So it's been at least 20 years, maybe 21 or 22, since the conclusion of the conquest. So Joshua had brought them into the land. They came into possession of it. He divided the land among the tribes. They began to settle into the land. And for the next 20, 21, 22 years, Joshua was able to live in peace in the land of Canaan, now Israel. So we've had about 2 decades have passed now, and his days are coming to a close. He knows that. He knows the end is near. So calls the people together and says, let me give you my final charge. Notice how it begins in chapter 23. He says, with verse 2, I am very old. Well, it's 110 years old, yeah. You yourselves have seen everything that the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. So he reminds them as he begins his address, listen, you've seen all that God has done, his miracles, his signs, his wonders. It was God who gave you the land. It wasn't me. It wasn't my great leadership. It wasn't your strength or your power. It was God who has done this for you. You've seen it with your very eyes. God has given you the land. And for the last 20 years, we have peace in the land now. Oh, what a wonderful gift of God that is. So remember that God has done all this for us. This is what we need to do as we look to the future. So in this farewell address, he is going to tell them what you need to do is to look toward the future, recognizing all that God has done for you, all that God has given to you. Now, tomorrow's session, we'll begin to look at the particulars Joshua has in his address as he has them look toward the days ahead and how they are to live as the people whom God has blessed so richly. So join us next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Joshua.